Alright, back with a new tutorial. In this one, we will introduce technical information about the model which we imported earlier. We are going to use a scrollable image as we will be using this later on in an augmented reality app used on a phone or tablet, and we want to make the information as large as possible. We will also create a small script in JetGPT so we can activate the technical information by pressing on a button. But that's enough said, let's go. First, head over to the button that we want to assign the image to. I selected it on the left hand side. Pressing the F button takes you directly to it. I turned off the canvas, which I can turn back on by pressing the button on the right hand side. As you can see, the canvas is shown. It's the rectangular white area. Now we want to add a panel that we can drop the image onto. So we want to head over to Game Object, then UI, then Panel. Let me just zoom out. You can see the panel is dropped on the canvas. It's the same size. Let's first rename this. This is going to be our scroll image. And we want the scroll image to be a child of the bottom button. There we are. So that's dropped onto. But it's a little bit too large, so we can go to the Rect tool and we can change its size. It's a little bit hard to see as you may want to see the robot and the technical documentation. So what we can do is we can grab the tab of the game, drop it next to the viewport, and as you can see, the panel is projected. Let me hold down Shift and pan back into view. And I'm just gonna resize all this. So it's next to the robot, but leaves a little bit of space at the borders. This is about the size I want the image to appear. I would like to add a border just to make it a little bit nicer. So what we can do is we can create a folder and we're going to store everything with textures. And let's create a new folder. Right hand mouse button, create and create folder. Technical information. There we are. Now we are going to bring in the frame that we want to use as a border. And let me just quickly show you what we're going to bring in. And that's going to be this image. It's a transparent image on the outside. It just has a border with a decal. So I can just leave this. Let me just drag and drop it. As you can see, I dropped it into the folder. It's a regular image. When I click on it, I need to change this to a sprite 2D and UI so I can use it on the graphical user interface or on the panel in this case. I can click on apply. I can just drop it in here and there we are. And we have a small border around the edge. And let me just show you what we are going to bring in. This is the image showing the robot with some technical data. This one has been downloaded from the website of the robot manufacturer. And what we want to do is we want to project information inside of this area right here when we need it. And since we are going to project this onto a tablet or phone later, we want the image to be as large as possible. We are going to make this scrollable so we can scroll to the left and right, top and bottom to find anything we need. So the first thing we want to do is drop the image into the folder, which is right here. And now we want the image to be on top of the scrollable image. First thing, I'm gonna drag the game view back because that one has been correct. Now I'm going to scene and I'm gonna go to game object, UI, and I'm gonna choose raw image in this case. Let me zoom back out. Let me just rename it to robot data. And the reason I chose raw image is I want to keep the JPEG or PNG file. There's no need for me to change it to a UI or a sprite. So I can head over to the left hand side, select robot data, and I can move the raw image around. What I can do is I can make it larger and I can just drag it. Let's keep approximately the same scaling. I can put it on top. But as you can see, it's still white. It's just a raw image. I need the image to be projected on top of it. So what I can do is I can select the robot data. Then I can drop the robot data on top right here. And there's the image. What we want to do is we want to extend this to make it as large as possible. Since we are going to use this on a phone, it's going to be very hard to read if you make it small. So let's just make it into a size that we like. So what eventually is going to happen is, let me just turn this off. The larger image that we just created, which is shown by the blue dots, is going to be shown inside of this rectangle. What we want to do next is adding a ScrollRect component, so we can scroll the image left, right, up and down. So we got the scroll image selected. We are going to add a component, and that's going to be a ScrollRect. Adding the ScrollRect gives us all these options. The first thing we want to do is tell Unity which is the scrollable area, which in our case is the robot data. We are just going to drag and drop this in. And we can scroll in the horizontal and vertical direction, which is what we want. And the movement type is elastic. You got a couple of options. This one is going to give us a little bit of bounce, which is nice. Let's just take a look what's happening at the moment. So we got the ScrollRect and we can just move the image right here, up and down, left and right. Obviously, it's way too big, but we want this to be projected. So in this case, we want to add a mask. So everything outside of our panel is going to be removed. Let's stop the game view. And the way you add a mask in Unity is through the use of an image. So we are going to select scroll image again, heading up to game object, heading up to UI, adding an image, which is added. It's white on white, so it's a little bit hard to see, but let's call this mask. And let's make this a child of the panel. And there's the mask. Let me just go to robot data and turn that off for the moment. Our mask should be the same size as the panel. So let's just make it larger. And let's just fit this inside of the panel that we just created. So this is going to be our mask. So we got a panel with a border, we got the mask, and now we want the robot to be a child. And let me just make the robot visible again. We want the robot data to be a part of the mask. At first instance, nothing happens, but as soon as we're going to add a new component, which can be done on the right hand side, we can select mask. And as soon as we add this, you can see everything outside of the image, which functions as a mask, is going to be removed. If you look really careful, you can see that the mask is not really up until the upper edge. So if I just remove the robot data, you can see that we have a slight misalignment as we did this manually. We can change that easily by selecting the mask, going to the rect transform, holding Alt and Shift and make the selection all the way to the right hand button, which means scroll this all the way up. And now we can bring it in easily by selecting the rect tool, and at least we got it aligned correctly, and we can move it that we can see the border. We can move the left, and that is aligned perfectly as well. And we can do the same on the bottom, holding down Shift and holding the mouse buttons, going there, and there we go. So we got everything aligned perfectly now. Let's add the robot back into view. There we go, everything is fine. Let's just start the game. Then we can see that the robot is projected. We got the image right here. We can start the animation if we like, and we can scroll through the image. The only thing that we want to change now is have this panel appear when we click this button. And obviously we need a small script for this. So let's head over to JetGPT to create this. In JetGPT, let's throw in the question. We want an active state to be toggled when we press the button, so the panel to appear. Let's generate the code. And here we go. So it's got a game object to toggle, and then in a new function is going to toggle the active state to an inactive state, exactly what we want. Let's copy both of these codes. In Unity, let's head over to the folder where we keep all our scripts. All the scripts which we created earlier are in here. Let's create a new one. Right hand mouse button, create C# script and call this active state. That's the script. Let's open this up in Visual Studio. First thing we want to do is add a game object so we can reference the panel that we want to activate or deactivate, which is done through a game object. And we want to reach it in the hierarchies. Let's call this a public, then game object, and let's call this game object as well. And let's close this. So we have our game object. We don't need the update. We're going to write our function ourselves, which we created in JetGPT. It's going to be a public. It's not going to return anything, so it's going to be a void. And let's call this activate. Let me write this correctly. And that's a function. And it's going to be a very basic function. The only thing that we want to do is the game object, which we referenced on the top, dot set active. So it's the active state. And we want this, when we toggle the button, to be the opposite. So it's going to be the game object inactive. So this is the way you write it in code. Active here and self. There we go. The only thing that can bug us a little bit is when we start up the game right now, the panel is going to be active. We can make it inactive by just clicking a button, but just let's use a code for this to make sure it's inactive upon startup. So when we start up the game, we are going to say that the game object that we just defined, which is the panel, the active state should be set to false, so we cannot make a mistake. So upon startup, the game object is going to be inactive. When we click the button, we're going to change the state between active and inactive. And let's head back to the robot. In Unity, we select the panel, which we call scroll image. We have our script and we are just gonna drop it in the hierarchy. So the script has been added, right-hand side, and we can drop the panel on top of it. And now we wanna head over to the button that we're gonna assign it to. And I got the button selected, which is the bottom one. Let's head back up to the button that we wanna assign the script to. Heading over to the right-hand side, expand on button, and here we got the on-click event. Let's just expand this. We are gonna drop the panel in here, which we call scroll image. Then we can see that's a game object with a rect transform, and here is our script, active state, and the function that we wrote, which is active. Now everything is in place. When we start up the game right now, the panel is going to set to a deactive state, so it's not active at the moment. Once we click this button, we see that the panel is available. We can scroll through it, look for data that we need, for example, this view. When we're done, we can click on the button again and the panel is gone. And with everything in place, we have all the buttons and the functions assigned. So we can start the animation, we can have it rotate, we can scroll through the different materials, and we can get our technical information that we can scroll through. Everything is in place. Let's head over to the next tutorial to hide the menu on the left-hand side when we click on the top button.